Greetings everyone and welcome back to Wiki Talks. G20 Summit took place on the 9th and 10th September in New Delhi. It's the first time it's happening inside India, and we are going to discuss the issues revolving around it, the developing opportunities and the repercussions that can follow, especially for the region. We are joined here today with Brigadier Retired Waqar. He is a defense analyst and we are going to listen to him concerning this particular aspect. Brigadier Waqar, for a very long time we have witnessed that since the start of the new century, the Chinese have been going on with their corridors and projects of connecting mass development with the Chinese, with Africa, with Europe through the Belt and Road Initiative. Some people thought it as the new Silk Road project. So in that way, right now when a lot of the global leaders were inside India discussing an alternative to what the Chinese have at stake and what the Chinese have offered them. In that point of view, do you think that this corridor which the Americans, the Italians, the Greece, the Czechs and the Germans have come up, in which the Saudi Arabia leadership as well as UAE is also involved, and we have heard that the port city of Haifa from Israel is also going to be used. Do you think for a multinational, project like this, the feasibility and options concerning that, especially when we talk about Middle East, things are looking at conflict and such things involved, as well as the problems associated with India and role of other joint economic powers like Russia and China. How do you see the future of this project of India, Middle East and Europe corridor?
I think there are three major aspects of this project. One is, of course, is it economically feasible? And definitely, I think let's give marks to them, whosoever has conceived the idea, and some of it has been, I think, developed, that maybe it is possible. The other is, of course, how do you integrate different nations with different cultures, and then, of course, when there you have a lot of stakeholders. So one is that conceptually or physically, how does it come on ground? The other is the information domain, how this aspect, because an information operation, say 90% is action and 10% is narrative. So how this aspect is going to be played against China, against Russia. There are already, I think, voices coming from Turkey and Egypt because they've started feeling threatened economically because there are other plans. And Israel definitely wanted to bypass the Suez Canal. So I'm sure Egyptians must be kind of disturbed with that. But definitely, I would say in terms of economic size, there are countries with a lot of money who are getting into it. Some of things are on ground, some of things have to be sorted out. So these are two aspects. Then we come to G20 itself, and then of course link it with this corridor. Who was absent? Two very large economies, China, and although they were represented by second or third tier leadership, but the top leadership did not come. So that was the very first, and I'm sure Mexico was not presented, and then probably there is one odd country. So it means that two large economies of one, of course, the largest economy, China, and then is one of the, I think, again, very important countries, Russia, did not, join. So it means there were apprehensions already. So even you look at joint communique, there were issues related to making it. It took like maybe 5 days, and they come up with actually nothing. So they had to address the. Also, I think Russia have to see this corridor. I think I'll just take a while. How does it affect? I think it affects China less and affects Russia more, because Russia is physically now blocked in Eastern Europe. In terms of energy and transportation. And all they were looking at was a north-south corridor, which would connect Russia and then I think Azerbaijan, Iran, and through Indian Ocean to India or South Asia. So this was, I would say, the dream project, that it would allow Russia an outlet into warm waters. And then, of course, Russia is already connected with China strategically, so they could use the CPEC or the BNR to Gwadar. Now, if we look at this route, is now actually literally bisecting north-south. So it's creating another alternative, and so it means that India will be also part of this new corridor. So I think Russia should be feeling more threatened by this. This move, whatever the plans they had in future, they are going to be seriously jeopardized. I'm sure people sitting in Moscow will have to have a look at that. So physically, it is possible. Then of course, when you look at operationalization, when there are 6-7 countries and different territories involved, so how do you, in case there is a conflict, just imagine if it is passing through Haifa and then Palestinian and Israel conflict starts, so there is a Israel, this is a war-torn region. So there is a war in that area or conflict, so this route will be shut, and same is in case there is tension in the Strait of Hormuz, again this route is threatened.
Exactly.
So these are some of the challenges, but definitely if you look at the potential, it has the potential, and I think the winner would be India itself because it has a strong industrial base, and they would like to bring the level of China as the new workshop of the world, and then of course there are energy supplies going from Gulf. Saudi Arabia, UAE should be the winners, and then transportation to Europe.
Yeah, the first part of the question when it comes to the infrastructure, we have seen that huge railway lines are going to be placed in the Gulf nations, especially in UAE, in Saudi Arabia, which is already working on it, in Jordan as well as in Israel. It seems as if a line has been drawn starting from Mumbai towards Dubai port, enters into the Gulf nations, goes towards the port of Haifa. So it starts from a boat, enters into a train, starts off with another boat, docks at Greece, and ends up with another train and ends up at Prague. So in that aspect, especially when it comes to this huge infrastructure play, wouldn't you consider that the shortest route would be from Iraq to Turkey and to Europe?
I think this is also it is a good anomaly with Pakistan providing a route to Afghanistan for India. There was some discussion. So you load a truck in Punjab, Indian Punjab, and straight unload it into Kabul. Very, very simple. So when the India started bypassing Pakistan through Iran, although there were 3 countries involved, so I think this thing came up. So it's a very good analogy that let's say there's something manufactured in India, maybe somewhere in the central Indian region, whatever, and it is offloaded, loaded from port of Munda or let's say Mumbai or in the south, and then starts loaded on a super ship, goes to Dubai, unloads on the port, and then it is put on a train or a truck, and then it passes through UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and finally it is again offloaded at Haifa, put on a ship.
From Jordan, not Iraq. From Jordan to Israel.
Israel, yeah. And and then it is offloaded again at Greece in some port, and then it's transported. So I think it looks quite challenging that in case you have land routes available, like I think shortest route actually will be India, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, and going to Europe. Let's say if you want Middle East, then of course it could be as Turkey has suggested. And then of course there are there are ports already functional on Suez Canal, so it could be. So I think this aspect has to be seen. And then, as I mentioned, that this passes through a zone of conflict. Even India, Pakistan could have a conflict. Then you could have a conflict across the Persian Gulf, and Israel is, I think, a conflict-torn region. Jordan, Syria, not directly affected Jordan, but definitely it's part of the play. So how do they, I think, and then of course Greece, Turkey, there are tensions.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good idea, but maybe it's a pipe dream.
I remember during the Trump administration, there were talks about, getting the companies, the outsourced companies that were manufacturing a lot inside China, especially when it comes to electronics, and the consumer market being applied back in US and as well as in Europe. Was cheap labor, huge manufacturing capability of the Chinese. Many prominent, Western companies relied completely on China. So there was an alternate approach. We remember that they started to think about moving a lot of Apple stores from China into India. And when they decided that maybe that's not a very feasible approach, since India is not that much capable in terms of manufacturing that much product that they require back at home. So now they're thinking of that why not connect that same issue with the ASEAN nations like Vietnam, Thailand, as well as Taiwan and Malaysia and Indonesia. You distribute these companies equally amongst each other, as long as we are getting the same ratio out of it. So solely you are not going to rely on the Chinese anymore, and then this infrastructure project can go in hand.
Yeah, it may be having advantages, but if you look at China in terms of one window operation, even the B&R or the CPEC, basically it was Chinese investment, and definitely they have an agreement. So it's a bilateral, with us or Iran or with Russia. So it's very easy to overcome the red tapeism, and it's definitely efficient. Same was true in terms of manufacturing. India itself is large manufacturing base, not very efficient. There's a corruption, and then of course there are typical South Asian ways where it starts affecting the efficiency. Now you want to distribute just to, because China has already crossed in terms of, I think, purchasing power parity or nominal GDP, it has crossed the American economy. And if you look at the American debt is like $36 trillion. So if you minus it from the GDP, actually you are left with minus maybe $12 trillion minus economy. Whereas in case of China it is not. So if you want to just, I would say that some part is always physical, some part is in the information operation domain, as we normally say that even Ukraine conflict has been used in info ops on both sides. So this will be a kind of tool for pressurizing China and giving alternatives. They have tried Quad very hard, remember?
Yeah.
Where is Quad now? If the Western Quad is now coming up, so like this new economic corridor, maybe tomorrow they come up with that we need security of this corridor, so they would like to put a force in. And already there are, I think, US fleets are there in Indian Ocean. So all told, I think saying or conceiving is easier, putting it on ground will be difficult. And then of course India itself has competitors. Southeast Asia, do you think they are going to help India? There is going to be a competition. They want to shift the manufacturing. And then China has alternatives. Pakistan can become
there are three
new
ports,
outlet.
Gwadar, Hambantota, as well as the infrastructure development inside Bangladesh. So already there is a diamond for the Chinese market.
Exactly.
And India
and then Iran, Turkey, Russia. So and I also want to ask the Indian that do you want to be part of the Eurasian framework or Eurasian Brotherhood, or you want to be a colony of the ex-colonists? By joining the West in Quad, all three were colonists, like Japan, US, and then of course Australia, and India was a colony. So it means that you basically connive with your master, and then you project yourself, something like Moody's 56-inch chest. So I think there's a lot of ground to be covered, but let's see how it comes up.
Coming back to India, we have seen that in the G20 summit previously held in another nation, the West has applied a lot of pressure tools against the Chinese and Russians concerning the Ukrainian war by the G7 summits and G20 summits and any economic summit or any international summit you call it. But in this dynamics, we have seen the Indians gain a lot from the West in the G20 summit, yet they didn't give much to them, especially when it comes to the Ukrainian conflict. Hardly any statement was made.
And do you think the West doesn't know it?
They do know.
So that's why
Mr. Biden was present there.
That's the question, that you want to be part of Eurasian. You can't have your foot in two boats. It's very, very dangerous. So, but I think it was well showcased by Moody. It's almost $500 million, if I am correct, 4,000 crores. I don't know. It's very difficult to translate Indian crores into millions of dollars. That's kind of money which was spent. Delhi saw for the first time a cleanliness drive, and there are, I think, videos of how slums were covered. Very, very, I would say, unfortunate.
Street dogs were, wrapped up and in fact killed in thousands before that happening. And we also remember a big incident of the Imam Masjid being killed, on the outskirts of Delhi. This happened before the summit, so already there was a build-up. And another important thing is the BJP applied their nationalism tool a lot. The choice of the Indian national flower, the lotus, is also an insignia of the BJP.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
That you now monopolize,
Yeah,
even an
exactly.
international event and turn it into, RSS agenda. So even, this, I would say, gimmickry of Bharat replacing India. So, I mean, this is all BJP and RSS is good at. Look at the poverty level in India. Still, in terms of, like poverty from the World Bank perspective is $3 a day. You're earning less than that, but India says no, it's $1 because India has a special, measure. So in that sense, I think it's almost 80 crore people who are touching the poverty line or below that. And now you're spending so much of money. Definitely, diplomacy has done well, so we'll appreciate, I think, Jaishankar, the way he has conducted, or Modi. But what finally did you get out of it? So was it this corridor supposed to come out of this G20? Because when you say G20, wants to be a body of the leading economies and then working together to sort out problems. If you couldn't come up with a proper communique and you had to compromise, so I think it has been pluses and minuses in this conference.
It was a huge geopolitical agenda, I would say. Another key factor is there is a lot of comparison going on between the success story of the Indians in G20, which they are projecting a lot of it, and the BRI initiative, especially the link, which is the CPEC route from the Chinese perspective. How do you foresee, because the CPEC project has been ongoing since 2012 and early 2013, and it's almost been 10 years. Do you think that we have to learn a lot from what the Indians are doing right now and think for making this project better in terms of infrastructure as well as exchange of goods between the Chinese, Pakistanis as well as the Gulf countries? Because otherwise, if this project is feasible and is completed, we might turn out a little bit at the isolation block again.
Yeah, I don't think so, because there are a lot of countries which are affected. The other is that CPEC and part of VR is on ground. It exists in terms of infrastructure, in terms of communication, the vehicles ply, and it's very, very simple. That, it's, let's say, Chinese manufactured good passing through these corridors and then they move on. In terms of this India, Middle East, Europe corridor, it's still, I would say, part of it may be there on ground. I'm sure Saudi Arabia has infrastructure and it's a matter of linking. But definitely when you want to formalize and you want to address the custom duties and, so definitely you're going to bring down the walls of, bureaucracy to make it, and exclusively help. So it's still, it may take, couple of years or I would say a decade to really start helping those countries. But then also it starts creating challenges and opportunities for countries like Iran, Pakistan, China, Russia, Turkey, Egypt, and of course there are so many other African countries whose economies were depending on the Red Sea. So if you are bypassing it and creating this artificial passage, so there is a golden ring. You have Russia, China, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, some of the far region. Even I think this corridor bypasses the Central Asian republics.
Yes.
It's a huge area. The SCO itself, if you compare it, the entire SCO, which is almost 50% of the global GDP, has been bypassed, minus India.
Yeah.
So that's why I generally ask, are you part of Eurasia? Are you part of the colonial, legacy? So it has, so it means that one, we should be definitely building on CPEC, which exists, and there's going to be a second phase which is going to be launched. So it's not only already the Gulf is, when you're looking at Gulf investment or refineries in Pakistan, the destination is China or this region. So it means Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE are not abandoning you, but definitely taking advantage of the CPEC. So if you give them secure route and pipelines, there's already, I think, plan for pipeline from Lahore to Karachi to Lahore, which will be built by a Russian company. So things are coming in. So this can actually beef up the Iranian corridor and then the East-West move. Maybe at some stage, let's say Pakistan, India settle their problems. So actually CPEC would then, of course, benefit the entire region and Pakistan can become a huge conduit of energy and goods, trade and commerce. So I don't think so we should be undermining CPEC or BNR. It's a very different ball game. BNR is already on ground, CPEC is on ground. This is still being conceived. So there's a huge time lag. And then there are competitors, there are countries which are feeling the heat
Yeah.
or being challenged by it, because it's going to cut across their economic, I would say, development. So let's look at those countries. But definitely, we should be taking advantage of our brothers in Middle East, and plans are already there. So, because if India imports $25 billion worth of oil, I'm sure China imports more than that. This is the most convenient route.
Exactly. So, viewers, that's about it from the video. Lines can be drawn anywhere in the world. The only thing is, how do you see it having a foreseeable future, especially when it comes to infrastructure development, the role of the governments inside it, all as well as whether there is stability in the region. So these are three key important points that are related to the ongoing project, especially when it comes to different corridors and what the US, the Saudis, UAE and Indians want their corridor to be. However, do share your insight in comments, and please do leave a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.